Aloha kako no ho'i. We are back. And this mo'oiki, number 4, is going to be about Visipana Zen and emptiness and sound. So we're building upon, the previous videos. This week we are delving even further into the meditative experience where we're aiming for what I call emptiness or empty mind. In certain aspects of Buddhism, the goal is to find a place of emptiness where the practitioner is 100% present, but calmed in the observing mind, accepting of the self to the point where they can experience themselves in the all that is. Or I call it the higher self. I have to make a little distinction between, okay, there's a higher self and there are different languages for it. So this is kind of what I want to get into today, because there's the Western way of speaking, which is conscious, unconscious, superconscious, like that ego, mind, body, spirit, that kind of stuff. But when you're speaking in terms of Buddhism and Hinduism, they have different words for it. And they speak about the 4 minds and the way to understand the 4 minds, sort of like they see it as a circle, and there are spokes, and the center of that circle, the hub of that circle, it's your kind of your higher self. It's your center that is able to, through discipline and observation and non-judgment, it's able to make decisions that go beyond the decisions of the ego or the subconscious or the emotional body or the physical. It is able to elevate itself to a more central role. In people's experience, especially in the modern world, in modernity, since the colonial project became a big thing and capitalism became a big thing, and where classical physics and attention to 3-dimensional manifest matter became the major focus. It throws people off because it's not a quiet life. It's a life of aspiration, ambition, competition. And it's not a collective thing as much as it's an individual thing. So you get to where you want to go by, fighting, by competing, by standing out. And we see sometimes, especially if profit is really the bottom line and the centerpiece for living, you get to a point where people will make decisions that do not include the masses because the masses aren't, profit margin. They're just like expendable, right? But also that's where when people don't have a center, they can't mature. They're just running around trying to chase ghosts or, saying, I don't know who I am, or having neuroses, psychoses. They become sociopathic. It's all forms of mental disease, mental and then emotional and then physical. So if you kind of take a look at the way the Buddhists are putting it, I think it's great because what John Kabat-Zinn and many Western, I don't know what you would call them, spiritual leaders are speaking about now is now based on science. They can actually prove that mindfulness works, that meditation works. It's not a religion. It is a practice that helps you to mature and become centered. So if you're at the center of that wheel, you're not spinning around getting dizzy. You're in the center and things revolve around you. And from that position, you can better experience all that is and the essence of who you are. You begin to know who you are and appreciate who you are as a being. So generally, Buddhists call these 4 functions of the mind. The first one is manas. The second one is chittas. The third one is ahamkara. The fourth is buddhi. The manas is a sensory processing mind. Sensory, so the senses. So that falls under subconscious. The chittas are the storage of impressions that you don't necessarily remember. So also, emotional things that you store away, subconscious, sometimes unconscious. There are things that happened to you when you were a baby, for example, that you're never going to remember unless you've got like super memory. I do remember things of when I was a baby, and I know people who remember everything from when they were babies, like my son. The other one is ahamkara, which is the ego, and it usually is the one that thinks it's in charge. But if there's a lot of subconscious matter going on, it's the one that gets frustrated because it doesn't know why it can't control its, impulses. And the last is the buddhi, which knows, decides, judges, and discriminates. The point of it is to understand each function of the mind individually and coordinate them with one another in order to attain direct experience of what is called the center of consciousness, or the place from where we witness all the four functions of the mind, like the center of the wheel of the center hub of a wheel. So in other words, to know the self, or even the Bible says, know thyself. To be self-aware is to be free. In the Buddhist way of thinking, that's the purpose for everyone. That's the main reason you're here. When you find yourself, you know what actions to take. You know where you're supposed to go. You know where you're being guided. Some people, for example, they are guided. I kind of worked with the School of Medicine at the University of Hawaii. I worked with them for a while. I knew a lot of those students, they chose to be healers because it sounds like, I'm going to be a doctor. And a lot of them chose it because their families were doctors, but they didn't necessarily want to be doctors. And a lot of them chose it because that's where you make money. So for the status or for the money or because their parents wanted, but many of them really didn't choose it because they were called in that direction. So that's why there's this thing that happens that often we go to doctors and they're really not very good. They're not good with people. They're not good with what they do. So, and that goes right across the board for everything, because people who are called to healing, they have a certain kind of talent or energy or something like that. So a lot of us fit where we fit because of money. Some of us because of inclination, but we still maybe feel bad about ourselves because, our parents wanted us to make more money. And then we wonder why we're not happy. So the way I've understood this concept from His Holiness, who is the 14th Dalai Lama of the Tibetan Buddhists, is slightly different. He said the citta is the conditioned state of mind. It is not in control, but it thinks it's in control. It is governed by the senses, the emotions, survival, the ego's outside influences and experiences. The second one, the manas, are mental intellect. It's just intellect. It's not emotion, just pure intellect. And then the third one is the vijnana, and it provides awareness and continuity by which one knows one's moral condition. So the citta is the mind that we want to liberate, is how His Holiness puts it. So it's the subconscious mind that includes the ego that we want to liberate. When we can quiet the mind and observe without judgment, we come to know the various pulls of the citta and the manas. And with discipline, we can make space. We make a little space for the vijnana mind to be present. So that's where objectivity, the observer, when you separate and go, okay, I see you're doing this. You're really talking. It's sort of like you're talking to a room full of children who don't know any better, right? And so you go, okay, I see you're doing that. Can we just move here, there? All right, okay. So you're just sort of moving yourself to another position, and you're recognizing, I am not my thoughts. I am not just my emotions. I am not just my survival instincts. I don't just fit into this world because everybody else says this is what I have to do. You just kind of stand back. And if you can observe and love yourself, even for all your mistakes, because you have to have compassion for yourself. You have to have compassion for the mistakes you've made, for the decisions that you've made that maybe normally you wouldn't want to make. Often we do things, we act out, and then we feel so bad about ourselves. Guilty, very ashamed, and we carry that. So the practice of meditation moves you away from that guilt. It's non-judgmental. It's like, okay, that's human, you did that. Now where can we go? And why would you have shame? You would have shame because there is something else in you that says, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. That's not how I want to be. So we don't want to judge, we don't want to shame, we don't want to feel all those things. We want to learn to have compassion even for ourselves. We have to learn how to forgive ourselves as well. And if we can have compassion for ourselves and we can forgive ourselves, we can have compassion for other people and we can forgive other people. We don't have to, put ourselves in the line of fire every time just because we're compassionate human beings. Oh, okay, wait, come back. There's a piece of my face you haven't stepped on yet. That's not what this is about. This is not about being so loving that you're a doormat. That is not what this is about at all. It's about honoring yourself. So if you honor yourself, you don't allow people to treat you that way either. The more we meditate, therefore, the more individuated we become. And so individuation is a Jungian term. He's looking at impulses and he kind of has a whole impulse. And if you can recognize it, it usually falls into a archetypal pattern. And he says it's really dangerous if you're really drawn to the mother archetype and then you're only doing this mother archetype and you can't mother yourself or you get stepped on or whatever, it's dangerous because it's a perfected mode and humans aren't perfect. But individuation is trying to find all the different parts of yourself and integrate them into, a whole and centered persona. But anyway, so that's kind of what the Buddhists are doing. They don't call it individuation. They just are finding that middle path. So the more we come to recognize all the different parts of ourselves, the more we are able to integrate them and become ourselves, become more centered in ourselves. And when we can become more centered, when we know ourselves, it's when we become free. So I will leave a link below for a site that is a traditional yoga and meditation practice stemming from the Himalayan masters. For today's practice, I have borrowed from a 20-minute meditation from a wonderful Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk called Thich Nhat Hanh. I have scaled it down to 5 minutes for the purpose of our exercise. So let me see. Thich Nhat Hanh, I want to talk a little bit about him. As I mentioned, he's a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk. He's also a peace activist and a founder of the Plum Village tradition in Dordogne of southern France. Thich Nhat Hanh spent much of his elder life residing at the Plum Village monastery after he had already earned international recognition through his 100 plus published books, 70 of them in the English language. And his many retreats and talks have been filmed. You can find them on YouTube or written about. He has taught at Princeton, Columbia, and Cornell universities. His approach, like I said, is a mixture of various teachings, including Mahayana, Yogacara, Zen, mindfulness, and early Buddhism that arose from Taoism. He was also a leader in what is called engaged Buddhism. In fact, he's credited for um, putting a name to it, engaged Buddhism. And that seeks to apply the insights from meditative practice to social, political, environmentalist injustices. To that end, he was a colleague and inspiration to others, including Thomas Merton and Martin Luther King. King nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1967 for his political activism, or some would say his meditative practice. He was exiled from Vietnam in 1975 and appeared in CIA documents that said he was a quote unquote brain truster of Thich Tri Quang, who was labeled as a political dissident. So the CIA said, we have to watch out for this guy, this peace guy. Thich Nhat Hanh is now 93, and Vietnam has allowed him to return home. He went back there in 2018, where he will spend his remaining days in his root temple, Tu Hieu Temple, near Hue, Vietnam. I've included a link below on Thich Nhat Hanh in case you would like to experience his full 20-minute meditation for yourself. I really wanted you to experience it's a really beautiful meditation. It's incredibly impactful. And hopefully after you come out of it, you will see a difference in the way you feel about yourself. It's really quite beautiful. It's an incredibly impactful example of a meditation that brings you into the present. So it uses vipassana, but also it's very Zen-like. And he's using multiple sources. He uses mindfulness, he uses Zen, he uses the traditional Buddhism, the Mahayana path, the Chana, actually Chana is more Zen. That's the older term for Zen. But coming from that line, they also incorporated Taoism into the thing. So he's a very all-around person. And he brings you into the present moment while also, in a poetic fashion, he brings you to moments of emptiness. And he uses sound to do it. So when you're in there, even if I'm not speaking, because I'm not going to be speaking the whole time, I'm just going to be saying small little things, and then you just keep breathing and you allow your experience to be what it is. You just allow it. But there's going to be moments of silence in there. But it is helped along by sound. And with the sound, you'll feel the vibration of the sound. But then there's going to be like a little few seconds of complete silence. Good to look at what you feel when that happens. You might be surprised that when it becomes silent, you might feel a little bit jittery or a little bit uncomfortable. And it's very important for you to observe that because it says something. You don't have to analyze it, you just have to observe it. So just notice it and don't stop it. Just let it go. So our meditation today uses the sound of a Tibetan singing bowl, and the vibrations emitted in these sounds will easily put the meditator into an altered state. So shall we start? Okay, get yourself in a comfortable position, spine erect but not rigid, hands clasped in your lap, eyes closed. Take a deep breath and exhale. Take a deep breath and exhale. One last deep breath and exhale. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In, out. Breathing in, I notice my breath has become deep. Breathing out, I notice my breath has become slow. Deep, slow. Enjoy. Breathing in, I establish myself in the present moment. Breathing out, I realize it's a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. Enjoy. Breathing in, I see myself as space. Breathing out, I feel free. And when you are ready, bring yourself back into the room. As you continue to practice, you will begin to identify the different parts of yourself or the different minds that make up the chatter of the ego and the subconscious. These are not voices or elements to dismiss, but to acknowledge, to be curious about, and to accept without judgment. When the observer is detached from his various inclinations, the person can become more aware of how and why to discipline the mind and become free from the world of illusion. Thank you for practicing with me. And if you have any questions, like I said, please leave it in the comment section below or write to me at Manamo'o. And the email address is down below. In the meantime, as always, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Ahui ho.